Our root vegetables, things like our carrots, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. Things that are different about these vegetables. Number one, we have to peel them because they grow in the dirt and this outside covering touches the dirt. You don't want to eat dirt, so let's take it off. So we have our turnip here, which would be turnips, rutabagas, things like that would fall in the same category. Root vegetable would be something that grows in the soil, the actual root of the plant. Carrots, same thing. Parsnips, same thing. So what we'll do is we have number one, our parsnip, we'll peel. So I'll take a peeler, and what I've found is that most people will peel like this, where they take a little bit and they just kind of peel off. Well, in the hotels and in the restaurants, I used to have to do 50 pounds of these at a time. So when you're doing that much, you want to make sure that you get really fast at it. So what I like to do is I'll actually take it and I'll peel the entire thing versus just doing half of it. That way, I go about twice as fast as I would if I was doing it the normal way. Once all of this outside is peeled, you'll notice that the interior is a lot lighter than the exterior. We can kind of just get rid of these peelings, and at this point, this is all usable product. With our carrots. Carrots, same thing. We can use the peeler just like we did, or we can actually take the back of a knife, if we don't have a peeler, and just run the back of the knife along the carrot or any root vegetable, and that'll actually take the outside of that off also. So you can see that instead of going and buying an expensive peeler, I've just peeled an entire carrot pretty much just as well as a peeler would. So when you're using the root vegetables, these are very hardy vegetables. These are vegetables that you want to use for longer cooking periods. That's why with roasts, with stews, and things like that, you see these vegetables used because they're hardier. They can cook longer and stand up to that intense heat, pressure, and time that comes along with that. That's why they're used a lot of times in that. Now with this, we want to make sure that we lose our top here, or our stem end. And then I like to take off just the very little end also, because those are, again, things that are growing in the dirt. We want to make sure we get rid of those. A big important part of any fruit or vegetable that you're using is making sure that you wash it thoroughly beforehand. Salmonella can actually live on the outside of vegetables for quite a while. So you want to make sure that you wash those thoroughly and make sure that you get rid of any chance of poisoning your friends, family, or whoever you're serving, or even yourself, more importantly. With our turnips, rutabagas, anything like that, same thing. These generally work better with a peeler, going in kind of a circular motion so that you follow the natural curve. Following the natural curve allows you to get more out of it. Versus if I was to just go straight, then I end up having to go back 3, 4, 5 times, getting more off there. Once they're to that point, though, we can do just about anything. Cut it just about any size that we want. Now with our parsnip, kind of cut it in half there, and then at that point we can come back and we can cut it into whatever size or shape that we'd like to. With our carrots also, and I like to do this with carrots, is that as a culinary instructor, we use a lot of product to teach the students how to cut. One of those products is our carrots. The problem is when you first learn how to cut, they roll all over the place. So we'll lose our end here, and we'll cut it into a smaller size so it's easier to work with. And then what I'll do is I'll just kind of cut a little bit of an edge. And when I cut that little bit of an edge, I just take just barely the little edge off. And then that allows for a flat surface, so it's a lot easier to cut. At this point, I can cut it however I want to cut it. Now, I cut these into kind of a slanted shape, which does well for my juliennes, or my thin strips. Okay, when I cut it into those thin strips, then I don't have any waste. Whereas before, if I was to use another piece here, and I cut off that little edge, and I had it sitting on there, and then I wanted to go back and get these thin strips, then what happens is that as I'm cutting, I have different size pieces. So I have really thin, I have thicker, more uniform, and then once again, kind of the ugly outside pieces. Whereas if I cut it like this, I get nice uniform pieces and I use all of my product. Versus here, if I cut these nice and thick and then I try to do the same thing here, they just don't come out the same. That's why I like to use that type of cutting method, because it works out well. It works to my advantage, so I get more use out of my product, which means I need to buy less, which saves me money, which is just all around a better thing. Carrots, parsnips, rutabagas, turnips, all those. Great root vegetables, good for snacking on because they've got a lot of natural sugar in them. Also good for cooking because they hold up to those cooking temperatures. They also impart great flavors to things. Whenever you're using parsnips, remember they add a little bit of a peppery bite. They'll have the consistency and the texture of a carrot, but add a little bit of a peppery bite. With our carrots, same thing, a little bit sweeter. Definitely something that you're more familiar with, probably, since we all grew up eating carrots, maybe. And our turnips definitely hold up very well, definitely. So with all these, you're going to want to make sure that you experiment, that you play around, and that you use them as much as you can. Because at the end of the day, it's all about playing around in the kitchen.